Hello everyone, my name's Matt and I am a streamer, painter, illustrator from Canada. Today I would like to do something a little different and actually take you through a bit of a sketchbook tour, all the sketchbooks that I could find anyway. I've been painting traditionally since about 2017 and I've got quite a few sketchbooks that I've amassed over the years, but these are some of my earliest paintings from the spring of 2017. I'm just going to kind of flip through here and show some of what I was doing back then. It was mostly acrylics. Very, very cheap acrylics that I had found, like Toll paints and things like that. It's just a few little studies, mostly landscapes. A lot of these pages are very crumbly and craggly due to just how thick the paint was. The application of paint I put on these pages was incredibly thick. And I really like how impressionistic a lot of this early stuff was. Now, it was mostly me trying to come to grips with actually using traditional media for the first time. I had been at that point a professional illustrator for about 10 years, but entirely digital. I had never really touched traditional art in any way, and I've never gone to school for art, so it was definitely a learning process, trying to come to grips with it. And it was a very slow process, but I was happy that I basically picked it up in my free time between gigs as a hobby. And I think that really helped me. There was no pressure to do anything specific with my art in the traditional space, which was really nice. And it was very different from the things that I was doing digitally. So I was able to just be free and follow my whims. And I came up with some pretty cool stuff. I know a lot of people really love these spiral-bound sketchbooks. I have a lot of trouble going back through them, especially when I have paint all over the spirals. I find it's a little tricky to navigate these. I always feel like I'm going to accidentally rip out all of the pages. Like almost all of these are landscape. I don't know why I keep turning the page, but I think that's as far as I made it. I did want to show, actually, so I have another early sketchbook here, but I wanted to show that just like everybody else, sometimes I would start a sketchbook and I would do like one painting. I got the sketchbook when I was away on holiday, and I did one painting and then one series of sketches. These are some backgrounds from Final Fantasy VII, which I think I was replaying at the time. And then after that, there really wasn't anything else. So I have also abandoned sketchbooks. It is not beyond me. But I've also finished a bunch. So let's keep trekking along here. This is from August 2017 onward. And these, I think, these might still be watered down Toll paint acrylics. I feel like this is maybe where I started to get into some of my water experimentation, working more like a watercolor. This is before I really knew that watercolor and gouache were going to be my paints of choice. And it's so fun to see pieces like this, which are like, this is fan art from Breath of the Wild. It's one of the divine beasts, and it's something that I would return back to many, many years later, with a lot more success. A lot more, understanding what it is I'm doing. It's always nice to look back at these sketchbooks, and this is a tip for anyone who's starting a sketchbook now, and actually see dates. I find that's really, really nice when I'm looking back, because it's been years since 2017. It's been so many years, and I don't remember just looking at a painting when it was painted, so thankfully a lot of these are tagged. As you can see, since it was early to mid 2017, a lot of these are Breath of the Wild inspired because that game had just come out in the spring. I think this piece actually was one of the first ones that made me want to look into getting watercolors, because I saw a tutorial on YouTube that talked about getting these really, fade misty washes for trees in the mist. I couldn't quite get that effect just working with acrylics. There's a painting that I started working on and then gave up on. I think this was going to be a ship. And then, as you can see, I also did this back in the day, going in and slicing out stuff that I didn't like, stuff that I thought wasn't representative of the type of quality I was going for. Very thankfully, I disabused myself of doing that shortly. So up next we've got November, December 2017. So this covers just a month. This is when I was really starting to get more obsessed with painting, because I did a whole sketchbook within the span of 1 month. And a lot of this was done when I was traveling. You can see like the Mabim Bam sticker there from a show that I went to. So I was doing a lot of traveling and seeing friends back when such things were doable. And this is when I started to get into experimenting with more gouache and doing different styles of lighting and things like that. I remember being very happy with this one when I did it, especially the car lights and stuff. And this sketchbook has very, very thick paper. I don't know if I've ever used another sketchbook that had paper quite this thick since. A lot more of this sort of watercolor, wet into wet technique up in the skies here. Definitely experimenting with a lot of different things. There's a Pusheen. And this is when I got into, as you can see from this page, on all the smudging that's currently on my fingers, this is when I got into chalk pastels and working with those without any fixative, so they're kind of smudging all over the place. I really like how loose this all looks now. It's fun to look back at these really early pictures and just knowing that I didn't know, the right way to do anything. And it's cool to see those now, because I just had sort of a freedom that you slowly lose the more quote-unquote right ways you find out to do things. I don't necessarily think any of these are award-winning paintings, but they're certainly very experimental and loose in a super fun way. Some light shining through trees. I think this is where I started to kind of understand what would become my current style. Just going for something a little more realistic, especially this is when I started to gain a sense of patience for details. You can see in the bush there, I was actually painting in the leaves instead of just putting a smudgy blob down. But then here, back to the Impressionism. Just capturing light. And this is when I had just bought I think it was a Pitt pen, and I really wanted to do a bunch of fiddly line work, so I decided to draw a bunch of tree silhouettes, and then splashed some watercolor in the background. And that was the end of that one. Alright, so this is 2018, the beginning, I assume, of 2018. Not a lot of these ones, I don't think any of these ones actually are dated, so I was really glad that I actually wrote 2018 on the front cover. And a lot more panoramas and landscapes. Big part of the reason why I wanted to do this video was, even though many times on stream I've shown off my sketchbooks, I really wanted a place where they could all be recorded. They could all kind of be preserved for posterity, just in case anything was ever to happen to them. I wouldn't have to go rooting around through old stream archives in order to find a record of these. This is a repainting. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but it's actually a repainting of the opening screen to Final Fantasy I for the Nintendo. I think this might have been one of the first videos I recorded of painting. I remember propping my cell phone very precariously above. Some more paintings done while traveling. A lot of low horizon lines in these ones. Some nice snow falling. This was done by tapping one brush on another and having white paint in that brush. And it's spattering paint all over the place. Same here. I know a lot of people also like to use a toothbrush that they don't intend to use for anything else to spatter their paint. This one I accidentally painted upside down. Sometimes you just don't notice. We have a nice little beachy sunset there, and that might be the end of that one. Once again, back in these days, I would just kind of either hyper-focus on one or get a new one or forget about them entirely and move on. So that's that one. This was also the time when I got really into these sketchbooks, which, as you'll see going forward, are kind of my standard sketchbook to this day, whenever I can find them available. And these are the Pentalic Aqua Journals. So this was April of 2019. This is about 2 years after I began drawing and painting traditionally. And by this point, it was definitely more of a professional thing than a hobby. As you can see, I did a lot of painting in the interim because there was a noticeable quality jump, I think, between the 2018 sketchbook and this one. I did a lot more freestanding paintings outside of sketchbooks. But we have a Claire Saffitz here from an old Bon Appetit episode on YouTube. I was trying to get into the habit of, whenever I was observing something, whether it be like a movie or a show or a video game in this case, this is the Guild House from Final Fantasy XIV, that I would try to at least sketch what I was seeing to help keen my eye better to compositions and lighting and all that kind of stuff. And occasionally I would take them to full paintings like this. And this was a demonstration that I did, I think on maybe one of my first live streams. It might have been 2019, that sounds about right. This was for the Apple Blossom Festival, which is a local festival celebrating the one and only apple blossom. And I decided to paint one in their honor. And here's yet another example of watching something on the computer and painting along so that I'd be entertained, but at the same time, I'd be working on my skills too. So this is a Giant Bomb podcast episode. And I made sure to write down the date on this one, Bombcast Live, 04/06/2019. This is heading into the summer months. And as you can see here, we've got some lilacs. These were painted out at a cafe. As we get further to the present day, I have a lot more memories of actually painting these. These were painted at a cafe during a wonderful outing with some friends. And then we've got this cow, which was from a very comical photograph that I had taken. I was taking some reference photos with a friend. We traveled around the countryside and took a bunch of painting references. And when I got home, I looked at the pictures and I noticed that one of the pictures that I had taken was just of the lower half of a cow. And I couldn't figure out how that happened. I don't know how poorly I had to frame it. I mean, I was looking at the camera when I took the photo, but sure enough, there it was. So I decided to paint it because it was very funny to me. And here's some Canadian Coastline Highway. And some more Coastline Highway. This is also around the time when I really got into making the border before painting, sort of make it look a bit more like a vignette. Then we have a cathedral. And some more fan art. This is Skyward Sword fan art. And some more Zelda. I think there's a Link to the Past sort of overworld painting. It was a weird experiment. It did not go the way that I wanted it to go, but I still think it looks really wild nonetheless. Here's one I did in someone's backyard, a friend of mine when I was visiting them. Some flowers from my friend's flower garden. There's another Final Fantasy XIV character, one of the Shadowbringers characters. And here's a painting that I started and then just ended up abandoning, but it's one of the hosts of Terrace House. And I had gotten to the face and I got so frustrated because I couldn't quite capture her face properly. And I tried over and over. You can see like I was constantly painting over and scrubbing out. And eventually I got so frustrated that I just was like, okay, I need to, leave this alone, this is generally good advice. Leave this alone, walk away, and then come back to it with fresh eyes and a fresh perspective and a steadier hand. And then I just never came back to it. I just kind of abandoned it. And the rest of there's only a couple of pages left, but I abandoned the rest of that one as well. Should go back someday and paint over that opaquely and see if I can finish it up. Feels like a bit of a shame getting all the way to the end there. This sketchbook I bought specifically shortly after that one because I knew I was going to LA for a trip. So I got this sketchbook so I could start anew and paint a bunch of stuff. So here it was on the 6th of August, 2019. It was blazingly hot in the summer in LA. And I went to the Glendale Galleria and I sat outside the McDonald's. I grabbed a water from the vending machine to use as paint water. And I painted this McDonald's while I sat under this tree in the shade. It was really nice. It was kind of tucked into the corner of the outside eating area. So there wasn't really a lot of people coming by and like gawking or whatever. It was just very peaceful and serene. This is the view looking down toward the hills in LA, in Glendale. That same day, it was me walking back to where I was staying. And this is some paintings that I did during a sketch session. I was lucky enough to go to a sketching session at Netflix TV Animation, and they had a live model come in for sketching, and I didn't have any drawing stuff other than one pencil, and I didn't really want to do sketching in pencil. So I asked them, like, would it be cool if I did gouache? And they said, yeah, absolutely, if you can go that fast. So as you can see, this is a 1-minute pose. So the model only stayed in these positions for 1 minute, but I tried my best to capture the essence of the light and the figure and the form. Here's some more 1-minute poses. I highly recommend if you're looking to get into accuracy and speed with gouache, trying out an exercise like this. It's very challenging, but it's very rewarding also. And then we moved on to 2-minute poses, and I tried to get a little bit more dynamic with my lighting, adding these deep shadows in the background. More 2-minute poses. And then on to 3-minute poses and a drape demonstration. This is cloth draped over the figure. And another 3-minute drape. Tried to make it look real dramatic. And then we had a 5-minute pose featuring a costume. So she dressed up as Spider-Gwen from what was then the new Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie. So she's actually holding a little Spider-Man doll here. I tried to sort of capture the light and the atmosphere in the room. And then one more in the costume, trying to catch the full figure. And this is a painting of the perspective where I was staying at my friend's place and looking at the TV, yet again watching Bon Appetit, because that was the style at the time in 2019. And for this one, I got my friend who was also staying in that same apartment and my other friend to draw a couple of little characters that I could color. So I painted them up. I did this one right after. It was one of the following nights, still in LA. We went to a Carly Rae Jepsen concert, and I was so in awe of the lighting and stuff that they had at that show that the second I got back into the apartment after we got back from the concert that night, I was like, I need to capture this. So it's not an involved painting. There's no detail. You can kind of see the figure on stage and the heads in the crowd. But what I wanted to capture the most was the feeling of it, sort of the essence of how it felt to be at the show. And then I've got another Breath of the Wild painting here, significantly more detailed than my previous Breath of the Wild paintings in the old sketchbooks. Back when the game first came out, this would have been a couple of years on at that point. Some more Final Fantasy inspired paintings here. I drew this one. This is the start of another painting, but we ended up getting distracted. I was at my other friend's house, staying with them at this time, and there was always something to get distracted by, which is nice. And this is my friend's cat. And then this is after I got back from that trip, when I was back to streaming. So this is one of the first streams after I got back. And then we've got some more video game inspired things, more Final Fantasy. And this is from later in that summer when I was taking a lot of walks on the trail, the local walking trail near where I live. And I went back several times to this exact spot. There's a bench like right here that I was sitting on, and I would get out all my painting stuff after a long time walking up the trail, and I would have a nice rest and sketch. And this is the nearby marshes where I would also sit and sketch, and then this is that same place from the first trail sketch, but a little bit closer up. So these bushes here are these bushes here basically, but different lighting, different day. The big difference between this one and this one is I forgot to bring, I forget what it was, green? Yeah, clearly there's a lot of green in this painting. I remember mixing, or actually I think it was yellow that I didn't bring because I had blue. And I put a bunch of magenta and stuff to make this look more green, but it actually came out kind of a yellowy color. But what I did was I had burnt sienna, which is a deep brown color, and I just added a bunch of white to it to make it into a yellow. And that's how I kind of fudged it a little bit. But I definitely had real yellow and green paint for the follow-up paintings. And then the last one is also on that same trail in a different spot. There's some nice trees there. I really like this sketchbook. It's one of my favorite ones. A lot of really good memories tied up in that one. Now this one is smudged, but this is September of 2019. So this is right after the previous sketchbook. I set all these up in order. And now I'm second guessing myself, but sure enough, the 14th of September 2019, I painted this Mount Fuji across 2 pages. I was not actually in Japan. This is from a photograph. And then more live stream paintings. This is when we were all in the midst of Shadowbringer's madness in Final Fantasy XIV, so there's a lot of shots inspired by that game release, including this one here. And then yet another out at a cafe with friends painting, doing a little bit of autumn leaves, because I was so excited. I mean, it was the end of September. I was so excited for the leaves to change, as I am every year. I've got a Pusheen corn maze that I did here. Pushina corn, as you can see. And then some Pokemon in autumn. Dragon Quest XI, which I was also very much in the throes of playing. I think there might be more Dragon Quest at some point in here. These are more stream paintings. A lot of the stuff from here on out is things that I painted during streams. This one I had, it's a bit of a story, but I had suffered a bit of back pain, so I was laying down in my bed for large periods of the day because I was trying to recover. And so at one point I got so bored that I was like, I would really like to also paint while I'm laying in bed. So I took everything off of my bedside table, covered it in palette paper, and set up an entire painting station. So this one was actually painted entirely with me laying on my stomach in bed. I think it came out really well considering. This one also Final Fantasy XIV related. Now we're getting into the winter months. As you can see here, this is considerably later. This was taken right before a trip for Christmas, actually. As you can tell, it's very snowy, and this is a local view near me of just some houses covered in snow. And this hill that goes up and takes sort of the whole view all the way up and out of frame. And it really caught my eye how the light was like so fiery, the last lights of the day, the sunlight. And I tried to also reflect that in some of these red tones that you can see randomly scattered around the painting to kind of make it feel like it's glowing. Some more Final Fantasy XIV. And again. Some more cafe drawings. I really love sketching when out, or at least I used to. Can't do as much of that nowadays. You'll notice some of these ones are cut out, but it's not for the same reasons as the previous ones. In those old sketchbooks, I would cut things out that I didn't think looked good, because I was always, self-conscious or secretly worried that someone would look through it and judge the work, which is very silly. A lot of these are cut out because on my streams, I do live art giveaways whenever we hit certain milestones. So some of these pages are out because they've been mailed to people around the world, which is very fun and something I absolutely love to do. Here's a Final Fantasy VII Midgar. So we've got Midgar in the back here. You don't usually see Midgar during the day, so I really wanted to paint that kind of aspect of it, to see how the light spills across the city. And that's the end of that sketchbook. Another one that I really like. All right, so now we're into March 2020. So we're moving ahead a year. And this is, as you can see, Quarantine, Alone and Together. This is fully when we are entering the quarantine phase of life. And I started this one on stream and painted a nice warm cliffside. That's Arizona. And of course, what game came out around March 2020, or specifically in March 2020? Well, it's Animal Crossing, of course, so from here on out, you're probably going to see some Animal Crossing stuff, including these lovely fish, which you can catch in that game. Now, I was getting into a real monotone phase. I was trying to do more monotone studies, both on and off stream, and this is one of those where I captured the entire thing in gray, and then at the end I was like, it'd be kind of fun if I just put a pop of color, so I added a bunch of red poppies to the scene. But I've got more black and white studies here. I've got an elk, and I've got a couple of my two favorite Animal Crossing characters, Tom and, what is her name? I said favorite, but I haven't actually played that game at this point in many, many months. Oh, I'll miss you, Animal Crossing friends. And then I have some paintings done from the Animal Crossing Museum. And this was a plein air that I did on stream, where I actually stood in position in this actual spot in my town and painted exactly how it looked, which was super fun. And this spread here is the T-Rex from the museum, as well as a couple of fossils. And some more fossils. I got the Stegosaurus, and then this was also a stream, Minecraft. It was a really lovely sunrise, or sunset in Minecraft. Got some Final Fantasy stuff here, across these two pages, and these two pages as well. Had a lot of fun with the lighting in these ones. Tried to really push a lot of the values. This is around the time in my art career when I was really getting into pushing myself more to master values and make things look really atmospheric, which was super fun and still very challenging. More Final Fantasy stuff here, more sketches. I was playing a lot of Final Fantasy VI at this point. And now I'm back out on the trail. So this is early summer. We got June 17th here. And I painted the same tree twice because I painted this the first day, and then I was not 100% happy with how it turned out. mostly because I was looking at the sketchbook, like I laid it flat on the table where I was painting, and I was looking at it from an angle, so it came out kind of wonky. So the next day that I came back, I made sure to actually capture it a little bit better. And I got a little bit more of the glow in the background instead of the dark. I think both are equally as effective, but it was nice to take another stab at it. And then this is another shot from the trail out on the marsh. And then some more little fiddly detail trees. Very similar to, you'll remember, one of my 2017 paintings. Trying to recapture that. And then I have a Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda, very panoramic landscape here. We're getting to the end of this one. More Breath of the Wild. I think I was replaying Breath of the Wild at this point. And this is a shot based on a photograph that one of my friends sent me from when they went to Japan. It was a sort of night scene, but it was brightly lit by effusive neon lighting. And then a nice little stream. Alright, there's only 2 sketchbooks left to go. This is 9/18, so it would have been September 2020. It's one of those tricky things where I'm Canadian, but I work with a lot of Americans for like official gigs and stuff. So I end up going back and forth between day and month when I write the dates all the time, and it's very annoying. So here is the autumn leaves changing. As you know from my previous September sketchbooks, it's one of my favorite things, so I made sure to sketch that. This is my favorite sketch that I've ever made, 100%. I absolutely love the way it came out. It was yet again the marsh near where I live, and I had taken a photograph, which I loved so much, and I really want to capture the essence of it. I'm so glad that I was able to. And then I painted some Mario paintings. So this is Bowser from Mario 64 in his weird, very circular form. And then the ghost house area from Mario 64. And a Mario Galaxy. This is actually half of a Mario Galaxy picture, but I did one of the giveaways for the other half. So the page is loose. There's a gravestone from an old graveyard that I visited with my friends. We took a bunch of painting reference photos there, and this is one of the pictures that we took. And then this is a ski resort town. I really wanted to capture the glowing, warm light inside of the cold, the cold, snowy area. And some more autumn trees, and you can tell what season it was when I did this one. Good old Halloween. Now here I've got some Ocarina of Time. This is actually a painting that appears in the game Ocarina of Time. And one of the bosses that you fight rides on a horse out of the painting and attacks Link. And then over here we've got, I believe it's a sunset on Mars, because Martian sunsets look very pale and a little pinky bluish. And then we have some Earthbound and Pokemon fan art. More Final Fantasy XIV. And then a Final Fantasy XIV sketch. Did I do more? Oh yeah, I did much more after this. Here are some studies of animals that we did on stream. These are limited time, very quick studies. I usually write down how long it takes, but I didn't on these. If I had to guess, I would say these took a couple of minutes, maybe 3 minutes for this, this, and this. And then this is probably a 5 to 10 minute sketch. I always really like how these turn out because they're so quick and impressionistic, and I really try to capture the light the best that I can, get that glowing effect. And then over here, we've got some more stream paintings. Again, trying to push the values, so you can see I don't really use black in the shadows of this mountain. I use this almost glowing purple-blue to make it look like it has a filter on it. Almost Instagram filter-esque. And here's from a photograph that I took coming into the valley where I live. This is my house in Valheim, if anyone remembers Valheim, which everyone was obsessed with for a little while and then completely forgot about. But it was a game where you play as a Viking in the afterlife, I believe. And then a couple of more. There was another half to this this painting here, but again, it was given away. And then a nice little shoreline with some waves breaking up over the sea rocks. And then that was the end of that sketchbook. April 6, 2021. So this one actually lasted throughout the entire end of 2020 and into 2021, which brings us to the June 2021 sketchbook. And this is the most recent one. It's my newest. So we begin this one with a photo that I had taken at a garden center nearby, and I wanted to really capture the waxy nature of the leaves. And here's the marsh during the spring, or not the spring, is it the fall? June, yeah. So this is the late summer, early fall. And some more local plant life. There's a lot of garden center studies in here, because I took a very long trip to a garden center one day and left with a lot of photographs because I was a little bored. Another trip to the marsh, trying to capture how bright. The sun was so blindingly bright this day that there were no dark shadows. So I knew that I wouldn't paint any dark shadows in. So the darkest I got was actually this pretty light bluish gray, because I wanted it to seem like it was super, super light out. Another clip of the trail. I made kind of a vignette over on this side. I really got into a thing where I liked it when paintings faded out on the other page. This was the first test of my jelly gouache. I tried out that really trendy jelly gouache, and this was the very first attempt at using it, and it turned out great. I really love how that stuff works. Plays very beautifully. Here's some more dynamic lighting. A lot of the stuff from here on out is probably painted with the jelly gouache, because it was only recently that I switched back. This was from a stream that I did with a friend, and we were doing a master study. And so she had picked this painting, and I tried my best to copy it, but it was a very graphic arts style that I wasn't used to, so I feel like I didn't quite get close, but it was really, really fun to stretch myself and try. And then here is a Ocarina of Time fan art. We're getting into very recent stuff now. This is one of those ones where I didn't pay attention to the forms as much as I did just trying to get the values, and then I used whatever colors I wanted. So there's a whole, like the whole rainbow is in here, but I just kind of went wild and then just looked for the values that were approximate to what they were actually, because the photo I was looking at didn't really look like this at all. Now this painting here, I actually painted with my right hand. I'm left-handed. Otherwise that statement would not be nearly as impressive. But I did a special challenge stream where my community raised a bunch of channel points, and the prize at the end was that I would do an entire stream with only my right hand. And it was a real struggle to do, but I actually love how this painting turned out. I'm really, really proud of it. This one, not so much. This is yet another one from that stream, and as you can see, if I tried to do anything with tight control, my lines would get so wobbly because I was not used to holding anything in my right hand. And then that's where we leave off, because this sketchbook is still ongoing. It's a work in progress. So that is all of my sketchbooks from around the time when I started working traditionally all the way up until the current day, which is, as of now, September of 2021. Thank you so much for checking this video out. I've never really made anything like this before, so I'm not quite sure how to end this off other than saying, thanks. And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye, everybody.